Hi, I'm Russell Sturgess and I'm the founder and principal of the Enhancers Awareness Program, otherwise known as EAP. Over the next few weeks I'm going to be doing a series of blogs and videos which is explaining how the Enhancers Awareness Program works. Because I think it's really important that in understanding that you're going to recognise a fairly substantial point of difference in terms of how we approach personal development versus life coaching and other types of programs that are out there that are similarly aligned. So we're going to take some time having you gain a greater appreciation of the subtleties and the not so subtle components of our program that has set itself apart and I think has a fairly profound rationale in terms of what it is that any approach to change really requires and what it is that we bring to it through the Enhancers Awareness Program. So the name of our program really gives away a big clue in terms of what it is that we're about and which is about enhancing awareness. And in fact, in EAP we have a three-step process, of which the very first component of that process is being able to establish a very clear sense of increased knowledge and understanding in order to be able to make change. So generally speaking, when we're in painful places, when we're at crossroads, or when we find ourselves sort of repeating the same patterns of failure over and over again, part of that happens because we're not aware. Dare I say, I'm going to use the word ignorant. There's a part of us that lacks knowledge, which means that we keep on doing what we've always done. And of course that adage says, meaning we'll always keep getting what we've always got. So at EAP, the very first thing that we do is work on enhancing your awareness. And we do that by having you look at who you are physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually. And then we have that broken up into different aspects that we get you to self-assess in terms of where you're sitting and how that serves you. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time on this today because in our blog for our next video, we're going to be talking about awareness there. The second step in the process is what we call being strategic. So the first one is being aware, the second one is being strategic. Now, ultimately, these two steps are really no different to what you would expect to get if you were doing life coaching or any other form of intervention around change, where what you do is you take stock of where you're at now, you become aware of where you're at now, and to some extent aware of where you would want to go in terms of how you would want things to be different. But the second step is how you bridge the gap between those two, and that is about developing a strategy. And so the second part of the Enhancers Awareness Program has you develop a really clear strategy for how you move from where you're at now and what it is that you're experiencing to where you'd like to go in terms of the sort of experience, life experience you'd like to have if things were serving you in the best possible way. Where we have a point of difference is with the third step in our program, which is mindfulness, or being mindful. Mindfulness is really defined as remembering someone or something and considering them when doing something or when you're engaging someone. But in order to remember, you first have to have the knowledge to remember, which is the awareness component of it. In this day and age, people tend to use these two words, awareness and mindfulness. They sort of exchange them quite freely. And in fact, at EAP, we see awareness as actually being a very important precursor to mindfulness. The being mindful, as I just indicated in its definition, which is this idea of remembering someone and considering them, or remembering something and considering it when you're doing something. Mindfulness is about taking the awareness that you've gained and holding that in your memory while living life, while carrying out life. And here's where the point of difference exists with the Enhancers Awareness Program. In mindfulness, we actually don't ask you to go out and act the strategies that you developed in the second component of our process, which was being strategic. Whereas with a lot of other programs, they actually have you go out and take each of those strategies, and you have to be accountable around them, and you work towards achieving them. The only thing that we ask you to do in EAP is to stay committed to remembering those things, those strategies, as you encounter life. And in the remembrance of it, the expanded mindfulness is being able to be aware of and identify what the impact is and how it serves me. Because once again, the moment that we start to consider the impact and how it serves, we're now enhancing awareness, which means that we have a greater capacity to be more mindful. Now, we're going to talk about mindfulness a little bit further down the track, and particularly how mindfulness helps to establish new neural pathways. So mindfulness is this capacity to be able to reprogram the brain to consider relating to someone or something in a totally new way that's more serving to your well-being and to your health, to the quality of life that you have. And of course, what we find happens is that the more aware somebody is, which means that they take into account other people, aware of themselves and aware of the planet, what we find is that there's raised compassion and empathy that goes with that. And then along with that raised compassion and empathy, the mindfulness now takes on a much more, dare I say, spiritual quality to it, in its ability to be able to raise the wants and the desires of the person who's relating to the world around them, and so they're aligning with desires that are about goodwill and about benevolence and about making a difference in the world. And once again, we're going to be talking about the way in which awareness and mindfulness leads to this ability to develop compassion and benevolence. And of course, the last step in this process is ultimately being still and coming to this place of inner stillness, and this capacity to be able to experience relationships from a place of inner stillness. Ultimately, when relationship is experienced from that place, then you naturally are experiencing joy. And so it's really common that in this place of inner stillness you actually have joyful relationships that make life a much more enjoyable experience when you're able to have joy in relationship. The other thing that happens is that you develop a sense of purpose in having this sort of clarity of mind, and this purpose sees you bring greater compassion and empathy into whatever the work is that you do, and all of a sudden work becomes more fulfilling. So it isn't just about turning up and getting a job and being paid, but it's actually finding the opportunity to serve and to make a difference in the lives of the people and in your own life by bringing a consciousness and awareness of compassion to whatever it is that you do. So what happens is, as you become more aware, as you become more mindful, and as you have this awareness and consciousness go out and touch the planet and the lives of the people who are around you, as well as being about yourself, what happens is you start to naturally adopt a lifestyle and a way of living that was reflected in the changes that you developed in the strategies. And it's nearly like these changes invite you to align with them, as opposed to you having to discipline yourself or force yourself to adopt those behaviours. So we have a name for this approach, and we call it pragmatic laziness. And it's this whole idea that the pragmatic part is the discipline of becoming more aware. It's the ability to enhance your state of awareness. That's where the pragmatic component. The laziness, if you think about that word, it's about not being willing to do. And in fact, that's fundamental to mindfulness. Mindfulness is the remembering and considering how it would fit into what you're doing. It's actually not changing what you're doing. And so at EAP, we have this pragmatic lazy approach where we get you to create the whole picture of what it would look like, but we ask you only to maintain awareness. And we do that through journaling and through dialogue, and they're the two main ways that we're able to have these things become core to how you turn up to each moment and how you live each day. We have enough experience in working with people now that we know that this works incredibly well. And even right from the very outset, when we work with people over those first few weeks, just by enhancing their awareness, they automatically become more mindful. And that combination of awareness and mindfulness leads to really quite profound changes that just, it's as if they sneak up and people haven't had to do anything. One person even recently said that she felt guilty that she hadn't had to work harder at the change that happened as a result of being more aware and being more mindful. Anyway, so over the next few weeks we're going to be sharing more detail about these components and giving you a greater understanding. This is what makes EAP different to most of the other programs that are out there, is that we're really working on this whole sense of awareness and mindfulness, and that just by practicing being aware and just by being committed to mindfulness, you're able to create substantial change in your life that results in inner peace, that results in more joy, more compassion, and certainly leads to a huge amount of living life with stillness. Anyway, thank you for listening, and look forward to being able to tell you more about what makes EAP so special. Catch you next time. Bye.